Hey everyone, it's Bob. Welcome back to Elevate Your AIQ. Today's guest is my friend and longtime recruiting renegade, Steve Levy. Steve has seen every wave of workplace transformation, from expert systems in the 80s to the explosion of generative AI today. He brings both historical perspective and crucial insight to how we navigate the human-centric future of work. Steve and I have a shared curiosity, skepticism of hype, and a desire to elevate the conversation around work, tech, and talent. We talked about a wide range of topics in this long conversation, from AI fears and technology hype cycles to skills-based hiring, the ethics of candidate AI, and how recruiting can and should evolve. And yes, we also touched on his decades as a Jones Beach lifeguard, so maybe that experience prepared him to catch these waves and spot danger early. It was a fun, deep, and thought-provoking conversation. Yes, this is a long one, so grab your favorite beverage or take an extended walk today. Thanks, as always, for listening to Elevate Your AIQ. Let's go talk to Steve. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I am your host, Bob Pulver. With me today, I have my friend, Mr. Steve Levy. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well, Bob. It's been a busy couple of weeks between, virtual conferences, work, summer, interviewing, life, travel, heat.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
To make matters worse, Bob, I have a feeling AI is a topic on everyone's mind. Can you figure that?
I can't even believe it. I thought it was just for tech nerds, tech bros.
Here I'm thinking artificial intelligence. How come we don't talk about artificial stupidity? Oh, wait a second. We do on a regular basis.
We do. We really do. I want to dig into that. So, Steve, glad we got you in the studio. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with just a little bit about you and your background and what it was like to recruit before, computers.
Well, thank you for that one, Bob. You're a fine human being. Okay, well, I haven't seen it as much as others who are still in the profession, but look, I'm an engineer who crossed over to the dark side. I was an engineer for 15 years. There was a crossover period where I started recruiting, primarily at the college recruiting co-op level to start, where I probably could cause far less damage. But the funny thing was, when I started recruiting was right around the same time that I started to get into the artificial intelligence terminology of the day, the mid-'80s, called expert systems. And the way I got into it, my boss and mentor at the time, he's retired now, wonderful man, Leon Schwartz, was one of these people who was 30, 40 years ahead of his time. He was thinking, big data back in the mid-'80s when big data was a file of a megabyte in size. And, I was doing software and management science in his group, and he had heard of Marvin Minsky of MIT and Ed Feigenbaum of Stanford. And curiously enough, I was working for Pitney Bowes at the time. It was a relevant company back then, mailing. And there was something called the Industrial Liaison Program. And we were, as part of the program, you had, specifically at MIT, there might have been other universities, I don't remember, but MIT was part of it. And so got to hobnob with Marvin Minsky when I was, smooth skin, no wrinkles, full head of hair, doing my PhD at the time. And I was hooked, doing some, Lisp and Prolog programming. I mean, my from an engineering standpoint, my first ID was an IBM 360 key punch machine. So, the bottom line is I have seen the technology change and morph and confuse and excite for, getting not too far away from 50 years, which is scary.
Just to help you out, I'll date myself a little bit. When I got to IBM in 95, I did not have a laptop. If I needed to write, we had fax machines. And if I wanted to write a letter, I had to go over to the secretarial bay and sit down at a typewriter. And we used computers, but it was all just basically keyboards and a tiny little green screen monitor connected to a mainframe somewhere. And every time you needed to print a report, it had to be sent to some central thing and printed out on special, paper or whatever. So I've seen quite a bit of the evolution of technology myself. Expert systems, I remember probably mid-career at IBM. It was probably early 2000s where I learned from IBM researchers who were building, expert systems and showed me the sort of visualizations behind the scenes and how, complex it was to know every single possible path of every, question of every topic and things like that. And it was pretty overwhelming. So yeah, it's nice to see we've moved past some of
Well,
that.
we have to a certain extent, but in many cases, the cognitive elements of it, the decision-making aspects of it, they're more nuanced now than they were back in the days. There was something called the analytical hierarchy process. I forget the person who wrote it, but that's a great book for if you're into machine, human machine interface and machine learning. The book called the analytical hierarchy process. It's how decisions are made. I believe it came before neural networks and similar type technologies, but the way we are today is really it's a natural progression. We had the minds were there. People were thinking about this, going back decades before us, before we entered the workforce, and the software became better and less. I can't think of the word. It became less of a burden on the system, and then the hardware started catching up to it. And massive parallelism, quantum computing, all these wonderful things came along, and it was this incredible convergence of everything that began probably early 2010s, I'm guessing, although the research was being done well before that one. But I remember writing a pair of articles with my friend Rob McIntosh down in Atlanta back in May of 2016. I'm into recruiting, so much of what I do will have a recruiting slant on it. But he posited that 70% of all recruiting would be taken over by artificial intelligence. Incidentally, that's another thing. Expert systems probably set back progress on artificial intelligence about 10 years. Just the concept of expert systems. It was very bad branding. Very bad branding. But a week after Rob published his article, I wrote an article called "Artificially Stupid Recruiting," which kind of delved into the human elements that went into building these systems. If a human being is going to build these systems, their biases, their foibles, their idiocy, I call them the idiosyncrasies, will somehow get captured into the system. And then now that's where you get, now the hallucinations, edge case issues, model collapse things. This is a wonderful world of technology. And it's like, you and I both live close to the ocean, and I lifeguarded at Jones Beach for many, many decades. People are scared to go in the water because there are sharks. I said, yes, it's an ocean. There are sharks out there. They're not going to bite you. The chances of you being bitten by a shark are way smaller than, some, artificial intelligence system causing you harm. I made up that statistic. And so, the fear is it's fear, but it's not warranted by facts. And I think we've entered this area where a large number of people are stagnating themselves from learning this stuff, from trying things, from breaking what they're doing, out of fear. And that's the most human challenge we have in this era of AI is becoming, more courageous and less being impacted by the fear of what might happen.
Well, I think these are important points. And you brought it up in RecruitCon last week on the Hire Easy thing, right? When you pulled up FDR's quote around courage, right? Like, are we going to move forward sort of boldly, with courage, with curiosity, knowing that learning is just part of growth, failure is part of learning, which is part of growth. And so I think these things are really important. I'm not saying that everybody should know the sort of have that history lesson that you just talked through. But I find it really interesting because, maybe some of those expert systems developed because, it was in that sort of AI winter and they were sort of stuck and weren't sure how to move it forward.
It's possible. One of the benefit of having gray hair and not a whole lot of grass on the top of it is that, we have the memory of youth. We don't necessarily have to study history because we were there while that history was being created. We know how we felt. We know how others felt. We saw it in their faces. And, being able to take that feeling, the feelings that we have and humanize them for new generations, I think that's something that the people who are responsible for building these things are overlooking. I mean, we from a tech standpoint, all these companies that are pushing, AI and generative or agentic AI and solutions for this and solutions for that, they're just being speculative. And, quite frankly, I honestly think they're more concerned with the return on investment and paying back shareholders and getting out than they are in actually changing the world.
I completely agree. I feel like, some of the ways in which we're using this technology, first of all, I mean, I think because not everyone had that level of curiosity and is a tinkerer for tinkering's sake. And again, going back to sort of curiosity and exploring things, I don't know that everyone is really understanding, the power of what it can do. And so they're focused on just making things go faster and focusing on what's actually more, automation use cases than the power of, what generative AI capabilities, what LLMs can actually do on the kind of strategy, on the execution, on the how do we redesign work, what are the roles of the future. I mean, you again alluded to this a bunch in your session, but it's like if you want to make TA, talent acquisition, a strategic function, you've got to put that advisory, hat on, and you've got to think more deeply about, is this even the right way to handle, candidate experience? Am I even approaching this in a way that is going to, move the organization forward? I've got to be able to play defense, right? I understand risks, use my critical thinking to know that the output isn't necessarily fact from some of these tools, but I've also got to say there's an opportunity here to do things better and redefine, reorganize.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. I mean, historically, and not that far, not that historic from our point of view, planning exercises or, the planning process was pretty much a SWOT exercise, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We're in a very, very different era. And one of the things that I've been espousing for a long time is blending, is not just doing a SWOT analysis, but doing a PEST analysis, political, economic, social, technological. I have never, this is my, I voted for the first time in 1980. So you can do the math, see how many voting opportunities I had since then. I have never seen a political environment that's so significantly impacted economic factors, social factors, and technological factors. Never. This is someone who grew up substantially during the Cold War. The potential for mutual annihilation. I have never seen, the current business environment, the social environment, the economic environment so impacted by the political environment. And political is not necessarily what happens in our nations meaning around the world, any capital. It's the politics that take place in business. It's the choosing to go this route with agentic or that route with generative and not something else. It's, it's this big, massive, amorphous cloud that has yet to be formed. It's like the beginning of the galaxy in some respect. We have no planets. We have a lot of promise. We have a lot of hot air. We have a lot of energy, but we still don't know where it's going to go. That's both exciting and scary.
Yeah, I mean, it brings in, of course, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt kinds of, concepts and mentality where people, they're just not sure of themselves, so they're going to latch on to something that seems appropriate or plausible, or I'm going to look out for myself, or there's all kinds of sort of, I think, normal sort of human reaction to some of that
I
uncertainty.
think it's very normal, but if ever a time called for you know taking care of your brother, your sister, and your gender non-specific person, and I don't mean that lightly, I mean it, just take care of everybody. It's now. If ever the world needed a big old group hug, it was right. It's now. And don't be afraid. If you're afraid, if you're scared, I'll help you. I mean, I'm a first responder. It's in my blood. It's in my genetic material. For those who don't know, I mean, I lifeguarded Jones Beach, one of the craziest beach systems in the world, for 34 summers. Someone is in trouble, I save them. I don't yell. I help them get back to shore. Then I teach them how to swim. You're like this, Bob. I've come to know you. The people at RecruitCon, all of those people care about helping others, teaching others, raising everybody up. And not everybody in business feels that way. And not everybody involved in the whole artificial intelligence movement feels that way. And that's a big miss.
It is a big miss. I mean, I've been feeling it in a bunch of areas where I've been focusing. One is responsible AI, and I continue to say we are all responsible for responsible AI, right? So we could talk about those legal cases where people are blaming others, making assumptions without any real evidence. So I do want to talk about that. But then on the AI literacy and readiness side as well, where I spend a lot of time, both related to current workforce and future workforce. So I've been dabbling and sticking my nose into places where it may not have been welcome, but I've had to be diplomatic about inserting myself into certain discussions.
That's why you and I get along so well.
I can't help it. My daughter's starting her senior year next week, so it's not even about her. I mean, she's got one foot out the door. I mean, she's ready to start college now. So it's not for her benefit specifically, although I've been concerned about this for a while now, but it's, I have plenty of friends in the community with younger kids, and then it's concerning, right? That they're not being prepared for, what some of the disruptive changes that we experienced on an even bigger scale. So this is concerning.
Well, they also have your daughter, my stepdaughter, also had the social neutering that took place due to COVID. I mean, that is something that we're starting to see that in the workforce. We're starting to see that in new grads interviewing and not doing well. And we're seeing, and these stories may be apocryphal, but we're seeing more parents calling up after interviews. If you ever do that, Bob, I will come by and just smack you. Your daughter will kill you. Anyway, that'll happen.
She'll be fine. She doesn't need me.
No, she doesn't need you. But that's happening. All these things are converging in a time that's tumultuous in and of itself. How are these kids? Did we necessarily have it easier? No, we just had it different. And and every generation has it hard. If you whatever the scale, whatever the level is, every generation has the same level of relative crap raining down on them. And so how I guess the one big overriding question when it comes to AI is how can AI help them? And that's a question I think I have not seen a conference or people debate that going forward. How does it help these Gen Alphas? How does it help the Gen Z? How does it help each generation to become whatever it is they want to become? in a manner that is most enjoyable for them, least noxious, least illegal, whatever.
Kids are already using it, right? Most kids have already been playing with AI in some fashion. It's on their devices. So, if your kid's getting a smart device in middle school, I mean, and there's AI on that device, so they should know how to use it responsibly and ethically.
But
And
there was the ethical part, maybe, we're seeing between, cloning and deep fakes and whatnot and bad stuff. It's, you're, we're seeing kids who can't write all of a sudden turning in works of war and peace and claiming, no, I wrote that. No, you didn't.
yeah,
By the way, we don't even have adults
yeah,
who are involved in the AI business divulging their connections and their advisorships and whatever the case may be to say, look, I mean, I spoke at a RecruitCon Hire Easy conference. I'm one of their advisors. I say that. And I tell people, I don't get paid, but they allow me to use the system free. I say that. So there's no equivocation. Kids are going to model what we do, Bob. And if we're not above board and honest in this era, we're screwing them.
yeah. No, I agree. So, I mean, there's always going to be, bad apples. If it wasn't an AI writing their paper on their behalf, it was, paying some smart kid to write it, right? Like obviously there's an ethical, issue there, but they're never. Part of this is about what are you really learning in school, right? And where does AI complement the curriculum? Because this isn't just. It's yes, of course, it's for students, but I mean, teachers need to obviously be on board as well, right? So how does this help me teach better? How does this help me reach every student? How does this help me make sure that my kids are learning and not just memorizing things and they're not being challenged? I mean, so it goes back to like the preparedness, like why are you here as a teacher? What, as an educator, why are you here? Is it just to have summers off, or is it because you get an innate, satisfaction from helping kids grow into, healthy adults that contribute positively to society?
But that brings up an interesting point is, teachers who have tenure now versus teachers students, sophomore, juniors or seniors who are going through an education curriculum. Are unis and colleges incorporating AI related stuff into their, bachelor's curriculum? And how? And what about the tenured teachers? Are they going back and learning the things that these new teachers are learning? There has to be a guardrails and rules and governances over all this. There has to be, or else we're having a bifurcated system of educators. It's no different than in the workplace, bifurcated system of professionals, those who use it liberally and those who don't or are scared of using it. The parallels are in every aspect of society.
So when I talk about the, people misusing AI, submitting stuff as if it was their own, I guess where I see recruiting and talent acquisition having, some similarities to what's going on in the education sector, whether that's, submitting work as your own falsely, or even like applying to college, which is immediately on my radar. Like you have to represent, it has to be your thoughts, your stories, those kinds of things. And so I just wonder, it seems like there's not a consistent response when we talk about like candidates using AI in the application process versus the AI that the employers are using. And so I guess I'm curious to get your thoughts on like where am I drawing the line in the wrong spot? Because people have been debating me about, oh well, I can tell an AI wrote this resume and therefore like
bullshit. Most can't. I was in Business Insider, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, about AI, using AI in cover letters, in resumes and cover letters. And, resume historically, and for folks who don't know this, Bob and I probably had to, we printed resumes, stapled them to, had a cover letter, stapled them to that. Sometimes we'd fax it, sometimes we'd email it in early days, sometimes we'd mail it. And I think all humans are very good at incorporating their own personal warts into the things that they create. There are telltale signs that something is not right. Whether someone wrote it for you, whether the quarterback paid the math student to do the math test, or the AI did wrote the resume. I mean, you have to look at history. If somebody is 5 years as an analyst and their accomplishments sound like that of a CEO, you got to be intuitive enough to go, something's not right here. Or if you look at like a LinkedIn profile for a picture that's clearly not, it's not in alignment with the title, the age, the graduation date, and the fact that the person works for Ernst & Young from the United States minor outlying islands. I mean, come on, some things are just, this isn't real. And that's just going to hurt the person. If here's the challenge is, many of these AI infused application platforms, you can, it'll find them, and it'll all the opportunities, whatever criteria you said, it'll send your resume and whatever you want to all of them. And there are some real downsides to that. Number one is it just clogs up the system. I mean, there was a post on LinkedIn a couple of days ago. I responded this morning about someone who had posted a job like almost 1,800 applicants. I go, time out. Average recruiters don't turn off applicant flow. Really great organizations say it hits 300 or 400. I'm shutting it down until I can get through them. So what happens is, as a result of the ease with which you can throw anything across, apply to jobs, you're really just clogging up the highways. It's like the LIE, on Friday, Rosh Hashanah rush hour. It's a parking lot in both ways at 3:00 in the afternoon. For those who don't get the reference, maybe Bob will explain it one day.
The Long Island Expressway, for those who are not New Yorkers.
It's the longest parking lot in the world. But it's the same thing, if it's not you, real humans, I mean, even my resume, you look at it, I put me into it. It's not going to resonate with everybody. And it can't always be perfect. It's simply, but recruiters have to be better consumers. Here's a good example on resumes. Look, when I see numbers, 50%, 25%, 100%, 33%, I know the person is wagging them. Wild ass guess. I know that. Come on, what's the real? Well, and so the hardest thing to do in recruiting, by the way, and this actually ties into the AI, is assessing, working to include somebody rather than to exclude them. That's the hardest thing to do, because it means you really need to know the role, the deliverables. You need to know that the reality of it is most people really write poor resumes. And whether it's AI or not, they're still poor resumes. Most recruiters write really poor job descriptions, whether they use AI or not. So here the reality of it is we're trying to take these two piles of crap, smush them together, and glean something, smart from it.
Well, that's where I think people are getting tripped up. And I mean, just for the record, I mean, that whole step, I think, should be skipped. And I probably said that in the session last week. Not yours, of course, because I missed you giving me shout outs in your session. I had to rewatch it afterwards. But you've got, an AI augmented resume, and you've got an AI written job description being matched, scored, stack ranked, whatever, by a third AI. And at the end of the day, what have you actually accomplished? And so the way that AI is being used or misused is not helping anybody increase quality of hire and be more discerning of who to let in. And you're right. I mean, if you as a recruiter are the sort of, the bodyguard, the filter, whatever, you're looking for both positive and negative examples, right?
I'm not a bodyguard. I maybe look like it or have the size of it.
Lifeguard,
No,
bodyguard, you know
but
what I
that's
mean.
not, that gatekeeper is what's wrong with recruiting.
Well,
You don't want to, the concept you want to keep people out. And I know the nuances that you're talking about here, but the concept that you want to keep people out is the antithesis of brand. It's the antithesis of, your culture and everything. You want to be inclusive. You want to be welcoming. And, the challenge is, far too many recruiters don't understand the role at the level to know that if somebody doesn't mention one thing, I can't think of an example, but they do mention another. If you don't know that that thing that is mentioned is directly related to that which is not mentioned, you're a crappy recruiter. You just are, and you're doing a disservice. And so the hardest thing and the easiest things to do is to go, hey, Bob, I'm not unsure. You mentioned this, but you're not there, but do you have that? And in time, that will be automated. That's where AI can make a big difference. We're not there yet. It's filling in the blanks.
yeah, I mean, skills. I mean, if we're talking about skills, like skills inference is there. It may not be great in every
Yeah, it's not.
solution, but
It's not great. It's
yeah.
not great.
But I don't understand what you're saying. Like, you need to be not only know, well, if they know this, then they probably know that. They just didn't mention it, which is why you can't just rely on keywords because,
Bingo.
my goodness, you can't just keep stuffing, keywords. And if one's missing, like, throw them out. It's like, no, if they know this, there's a 98% chance that they also know this. And if they know that, then this other thing that my engineering team uses, for example, even if they don't know that, they could pick it up
Correct.
in weeks. So I'm not
Correct.
going to not hire this person because, by the time we actually onboard them, they'll probably have learned it. Like, that's how quickly some of these skills could be picked up. But you're right. I mean, it's not, I didn't mean like, look, you've got to separate the wheat from the chaff. I mean, I think that's just part of you've got to shrink the funnel down somehow, right?
And the funnel, look, shrinking the funnel is actually pretty easy. And that goes into during your, what do you want to call it? Intake, recons, whatever the hell you want to call it. There are people who argue if we change the name of the intake, we'll be more effective.
Where I get concerned, Steve, is I see, I join a lot of webinars to learn and to listen. Like, I'm super curious about what kinds of questions people are asking and whether they're thinking about AI in the right way or they have misconceptions or what have you. And so what I don't like is when someone says, oh, well, they use this word or this phrase in the resume. I mean, that's just a clear sign that an AI, wrote this resume. And it's like, that's a big leap.
Hey, everybody. Got a quick question for you. Is your job easy, stress-free, and full of rainbows and sunshine every single day? Yeah, I'd say that's a big fat no. Hi, I'm David Noe, host of Speakeasy HR, presented by Payroll Partners, and proud to be part of the Work-Defined community. Take a step down into my Speakeasy live on LinkedIn and YouTube, where we tackle HR and business challenges through raw, uncut, unfiltered conversations. This is HR like you've never heard it before. Bold, real, and full of practical takeaways. Real guests, bold insights, authentic conversations that drive change. Catch every episode on demand through your favorite podcast platform or all the content at speakeasyhr.com.
Right. And first of all, they could have easily outsourced the resume writing to a professional resume writer.
Or they like that word. How are you going? How in your mind with your 7 years total recruiting experience? I'm not knocking those who have 7 years. There are people who are 27 who just bad anyway. How do you come to that conclusion? You don't have. I wrote an article. I don't know if you saw this one a couple of weeks back called "The Psychic Recruiter Fallacy," and that's where a recruiter will look at a person. They live here, we're here. Oh, they won't want to make that commute, and so they'll make the decision for them. things like that. That is a massive problem we have. I'm sorry, the fact that people told you secrets when you're 13, it doesn't mean you have some sort of innate ability to feel people. It's just you were less of a schmuck than others, and they listened.
So what you described before was what I want people to think about. If you're going to think about discounting someone for using AI in a sort of disingenuous way or an embellished way, then you've got to connect those dots, right? Like it seems unbelievably unlikely that this person in this role at this company could have accomplished that task or that whatever it was that they had a metric tied to or whatever, as opposed to just cherry picking like a particular word. Because I could have written that entire resume and then given it to an AI and said, "Can you just help me tweak? I need a little bit better like action words here or
Absolutely.
whatever." And it's just like, so now I don't even get the opportunity to have a recruiter phone screen because some recruiter was just like really just super, super picky for no reason. I mean, that's what's going to get a company into trouble.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and, incidentally, and that's for years I think of. I always give honest feedback. Well, this is why we're not going with you. I hate these no reply emails. That when people for those who don't know, most companies, when you apply for a job, they'll send a no reply at company. And, "Oh, we thank you so much. We're so, we really appreciate you and join our talent community." No one's monitoring this email. You're shooting yourself in the foot, and you don't even know it. You don't even know it. That's the hardest thing.
That's the norm, though, isn't it? Like they're so scared of just not just nipping this in the bud and having to continue conversation. Because if every candidate did that, oh God, what would we do?
I put my name and my contact information on every disposition I send out. I say, look, straight up, I say, these are the 5 specific things. The intake's my thing. I will know, use this example as something technology. When I do that intake, I want to know what initiatives, epics, and story points are kicking your arse and not allowing you to sleep at night. Because so if you can find somebody who can get those to do that stuff, you're going to sleep better. Oh, fine. I want to. Those are the things. Why would somebody leave this company? Because every manager, I want someone from Google. Okay, fine. Bob, why would somebody leave Google to come work for you? What will they be doing here that they're not doing there? I almost always get, that's a good question. And I go, I'm looking for a good answer. But that's part of, and if you don't know those things, but if you know those things, and then you say, look, these are the absolute things that have to be there. I don't see them in your background. But then I say, but look, I understand that people don't write the best resumes, and maybe I misread something. If I made a mistake, tell me, and I'll be happy to revisit you. I am not kidding. Out of every 1,000 people I send that to, only 2 to 3 get back to me. Most, and we have the data, my buddies, show that people just appreciate that. It's not hard to be human. Maybe it is difficult to be human and caring, and even in an age of tech, of AI. I don't know. I don't think it is.
I mean, is it partly just how people are being measured, right? Like I'm measured on throughput, and these applications are faceless.
Yeah, I've got X number of other things. I got 17,000 applicants to review. I'm going to disposition. I'm not going to look at all of them because there are too many, because I didn't shut it off at 300. And you're this is chaos. Not get smart chaos, but this is chaos.
I mean, I think the candidate AI versus employer AI goes certainly much deeper than this, because I was thinking not just that, I'll start by just saying my sort of general guideline, which is if it's socially and ethically acceptable to outsource a task to another human being, then why is it not okay to let AI do that? And that includes resume writing and cover letter drafting. You still have to put your eyes on it. It's still yours. It's got your name at the top. But like, if you're not a great writer, unless you're applying for a journalism job or for admissions to a communications school, that's going to be your major, then yeah, by all means, treat those as writing samples and I expect it to come from that person's own brain. But otherwise, like, I don't understand.
This is a tide that we cannot stop. And so it's happening. It's going to happen more and more. So you have two options and only two options. You can fight it or you can plan for it. That's it. And that's one of the things I spoke about at RecruitCon was the general category of AI collaboration and governance. I was looking at, I wrote an article, I guess, I don't know how many months ago about, the 30 future-proof skills for talent acquisition in an era of AI. And I came up with some things like agentic workflow governance, neural collaboration intelligence. Sometimes you write these things because they sound kitschy. People go, "Ooh, that's the underlying explanation is much simpler." Synthetic ethics navigation and general ethics engineering. These collectively, I'm reading from the presentation here. Those collectively, they're all about controlling and auditing AI agents and TA. Sourcing, screening, scheduling, rejection. It runs the human AI hybrid evaluations. There's going to see more of that one. Governs fairness in co-created work. Design hiring systems for fairness, particularly when we have a blended environment. What percentage is what's fair? Then you want to throw in some neurodiversity issues and bias surveillance issues that then they start compounding and complicating things. Preventing silent failure, scope creep, fairness risks, and automated tasks. Bottom line is, if you can't audit it, don't automate it.
You'll have no excuse, right? Because if you do automate it, then you're going to have, you're going to have the traceability. Whether or not you actually run that periodic audit is another story, but technically, the ins and outs of every step.
Well,
once you've
presumably you should, but ahead of time, the hardest thing to do is when you're implementing new workflows is to effectively define, what throughput means and what metrics need to be measured and why. The why is important. How ultimately does it produce better hires? How does the blended human agentic environment generate more revenue for the company? It's hard enough to do it with a human being. How do we do when we start throwing in AI into it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that was a fantastic post, and I loved your new phrases. I thought they were really actually on point. I mean, I don't know if any of them are gonna stick, but I liked them because you covered you covered a lot of ground, right? Like you covered stuff that went beyond talent acquisition as well, right? When you talk about thinking about how to build the workforce, all these different relationships with the company, right? Contractors and full-time and part-time and gig platforms. I mean, you've got to think about all of these pieces of the puzzle.
When you start getting it, just the interviewing alone, which I called multimodal and contextual hiring, which underneath there were four core skills. They were multimodal interview fluency, human, agentic, blended, crazy, always on culture matching. The more that my fear is as agentic becomes, I'm going to anthropomorphize here, wiser. What will it do to culture? Well, to branding? Will it create its own stuff? Don't know. Soul narrative design. I'm not going to get away from the human at all. People want to know what is at the soul of a company. We have, purpose-driven stuff. I especially nowadays, your daughter is in that Gen Alpha era in which we've made it so hard on them, and I think meaning is the way we may be able to get them back. They feel right now they don't have the knowledge yet, but being attached to a company that is doing something meaningful and nurturing the soul of its employees. As some people may just go, that Levy, he's batshit crazy talking about this. But mark my words, as you get older, what becomes really important becomes real clear. And you start realizing that, am I leaving this place better? What am I doing to create a better workplace? Not just more money or more output, a better place where if it's a better place, if your soul is nurtured at a company, you're going to, more of you is going to come out. You can't help it. You're going to be always on thinking about ways to improve it and to do better. But, these are things that aren't part of the AI era. And particularly in TA, we put it under employment branding now. But it's really important whether you're sourcing, don't just source GitHub for engineers. Go look at national defense, and environmental councils and talk to the engineers there. Don't just look at code. People who are already working on social causes or working on, important, global initiatives, that are social in nature.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, Steve.
No,
this is why I'm so bullish and such a strong proponent of outbound sourcing and looking way beyond LinkedIn. Not everyone's on LinkedIn. Certainly your best engineers, top engineers are not spending their days on LinkedIn, right? And so
they in fact are sub-R recruiting hell. For those who don't know, Reddit's the sub-R recruiting hell is gold.
Yeah, I have spent some time there. There's some interesting stuff on Fishbowl and some other places as well. But yeah, it just seems like even so one of the conversations I've had a couple of times recently is it kind of goes back to some of those days. So when I was learning about those expert systems from IBM researchers, I was also learning about big data and social media analytics. So going out, and this was before there were any real strong B2B cases for social listening, right? And so, but at the time, yeah, maybe you're just looking at, personality and influence and maybe tone and sentiment around your brand and things like that. But my goodness, people, especially over the last, decade, they are sharing, gold. And if you cut through the self-promotional stuff where people are genuinely trying to help others get up to speed on new technologies or learn some of the things that we're talking about in terms of the human-centric aspects of how we move forward constructively. And yes, LinkedIn is one of those sources where people are chiming in. If you can authenticate that it is actually a human being making those comments or writing those posts, there's tremendous, talent. Yeah, maybe they're not actively looking for something else, but that doesn't mean they won't take a great opportunity if you present it well. So there's just like, if you just wait, that's the other thing about this whole, resume to JD, AI versus AI, that whole thing could go away and you'd still have incredible talent coming through your funnel and wanting to work there. So that person from Google, maybe they didn't like the culture at Google. Maybe they're looking to make a complete change. They're not looking for that kind of lifestyle, and their priorities have changed, and that's why they want to go work there. But don't just source from specific companies or specific universities just because they're associated with that brand. I mean, that's first of all, it's not fair to everyone else, and second of all, those are the kinds of fields that should be obfuscated when you're looking for skills and potential.
The bias, it's pure bias. I mean, it's bias detection and bias surveillance in this blended era is going to be more of an issue. It's garbage in, garbage out. LLMs are just mathematical representations between words. And if you feed it from within on itself, you're going to see your own version of agentic or your generative regression to the mean. And you're going to, what's to say, incest is only relative. It's as silly as it sounds, but that's what it's going to be like. And so to your point, look elsewhere. I mean, LinkedIn is fine. It's the easy button, but it's like the OxyContin of the recruiting world, and it's addictive. And even leaders and EVPs and SE, did you post a job on LinkedIn? I did, and I got a lot of really bad. It's hard.
Yeah, it's one of these necessary evils because there hasn't been anything else.
And there's not, and there's nothing wrong with the easy button. But if you're going to, but you need to, from a recruiting standpoint, and this is maybe generative and agentic will help. It helps to a certain extent. It's, I can analyze, and I've done this. I can, analyze LinkedIn profiles for all our sales employees. I can also just get their resumes and go, what do the best performers? This person is these are the top performers. These are everybody in here. What's the gap? What are the possible signals that we need to look for to hire these top performers and not these other people? Generative is very good for that. But you still can't take the answer at face value. You need to look at it and say, does it make sense? Is there internal validity here? And that's where, the workforce, the companies that are attempting to cut out levels. What's going to happen when the feeder system, the cohorts no longer exist? You learn things by doing. Generative and agentic can help you learn in different ways. But for companies, and Facebook has been pretty vocal about this. We're going to cut all this. We're going to reduce our entry level stuff. And you know what's going to happen? You're not going to have anybody at higher levels. And then you're going to be quote, poaching from thinner and thinner pools at other companies. And hence incest is only relative down the line. It's just one of these things this is not a good thing. We have to rethink. It's not simply, let's just reduce, the CEO says we need to reduce G&A by 25% or else. Okay, I will do that, CEO. You have to first write me a prompt that makes sense so I know you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I think AI, particularly generative AI, is one of these things where you definitely can't understand it well and use it properly if you don't experiment with it. So this is not something you just learn in theory by attending, webinars and one-shot prompting and whatever. Like, you've really got to spend the time, getting in there. And, you could start with some specific use cases, but start with something personal as well, just to see how you need to iterate to get to what you're really looking for.
I've been playing it with it now for 3 years, 4 years, I'm more than that. And I treat a prompt like a product. It's build, test, rewrite, go back to the drawing board. And they're and now there are sites like Prompt Tester. So you can actually do a quality test and improve your prompt. I did a webinar a few weeks back for the great group called Chief, which is the women's network executive networks group. A lot of these are all C-levels and E-level people, Bob, and I got some really good feedback. And my brain is now working. My brain's on fire because of all the different prompt stacks that you showed us and everything. But I think I want everybody to be that way. You have nothing to fear but fear itself. That's FDR if you don't know. And, you have to try. If you don't understand it, then you get into the current things, which we haven't talked about, Mobley v. Workday, Hobson v. Sirius, etc. Two very different cases, but both very, very high profile.
Yeah, they're both intriguing to follow and, for different reasons, but I'm very curious to see, the evidence come forward. And I think, you brought this up at RecruitCon and you alluded to it at the beginning of this conversation around like transparency. I just feel like if you have nothing to hide, then show us exactly step by step what happened, right? And so there was a senior exec who I had a chance to spend some time with at IBM who used to talk about just in the sort of supply chain scenario, but like staple yourself to an order and see what is happening at every step, right? So it's sort of like way before there was process mining. It was just this visual concept of you like following, okay, here's an order that came in. I'm going to acknowledge that I received the order. Then I'm going to process it. And then I'm going to confirm that I have a ship date for you and that here's the parts that you ordered and the systems that you ordered and And then you see, you just follow it just like a Domino's pizza. You follow it step by step. So if you have nothing to hide, then show us exactly how, I guess without getting into, IP and the protection that you need to have around the way your algorithm works, but explainability and transparency are two of the fundamental principles within responsible AI. So if you can't show that, like, how are you going to prove your innocence, right?
You're not.
So
You're not. You're going to be viewed as a charlatan, as a carnival barker, as someone who's selling tonic that won't grow hair.
I mean, I'm skeptical of both these cases. I don't know that Workday. I have my own bias against Workday, not as a company, but Workday recruiter. I have never gotten an interview in all my years. I've never gotten an interview from a resume that I submitted through Workday. And I know I submitted a lot because I have about 36 sets of credentials for Workday recruiting for all the companies that I applied to. But on the SiriusXM side, where they were using iSIMs, I'm not even sure how this Harper even knew that they were using. Yeah, I guess you go in and you could see the website or whatever. But like, first of all, who applies to 150 jobs at one company?
Well, first, this is where they differ. Obviously, Mobley v. Workday, this was, implementation of this was actually even before HiredScored. This is interesting. You have all the expert influencers about ATSs and recruiting who've never recruited a day in their life. That damn ATS AI bot, it kicked you out. It doesn't exist. There is no such animal. A couple of things could have easily kicked you out. Let's articulate it. Number one, okay, they're looking for something, you don't have it. You're out. Bad recruiter for not telling you. And we probably could have shut it down right then and there. Number two, they never even got to you. They saw the first 10, they got what they wanted, dispositioned everybody else, etc. There are all these things that it could have been that are alternative explanations to the AI bot ate my resume. The Sirius case is more interesting because he applied to it wasn't too hard to find his resume and profile, and he applied for everything from tech to software engineer to this and to that, and he was just throwing stuff across the transom. He wanted to work there, but he was just for years just throwing stuff, but it's a similar type thing. He said I was eminent. I don't know if you read the actual case.
I didn't read the full case, but I read a bunch of summaries.
I did, and I'm cringing as I'm reading it about lawyers, asserting that he was very well qualified to be a software engineer or to be this or to be that. And I just looked at the Sirius JDs. I go, it's not there. But then we're left with the problem word. And the problem word in all of this is the word qualified. You know what qualified means? That's like a 70, a bare minimum. I'm qualified. I bare minimum, which is why, qualifications are nice, but the most important thing are what will you be doing? A position is open for specific reasons to solve specific problems, articulate what they are. There's scale, there's size, there's speed, there's reliability. There's a whole lot of other interactions that you can articulate if you do your intake well. And then it becomes, look, you have certain skill sets, but I don't see any evidence that you've worked at something at this scale. And it's important, and scale matters because problems compound the larger things get. But being able to articulate those things, again, it would have cut it off. It's not going to soothe every savage beast, but it will. And then, Workday, by sheer by the sheer joy of its platform, doesn't create many fans.
On the transparency front, it starts with an acknowledgement that everything was received correctly.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Like, so for most of those Workday applications, even though I took the resume I was about to submit, I put it into a checker to make sure it could parse correctly, pass that test. So I put it in, and I still have to fill out the whole thing manually because it didn't do what it said it was going to do. And so I don't know if any human or technology was reading it properly. And I don't know if
That's
an
possible
automatic
too.
rejection is, if it was just kicked out automatically because it didn't come through clean. So I have no idea as a candidate if that was the case. So how do I even know what to, forget about even knowing what was missing from my application? The application itself was essentially missing because it wasn't complete or it wasn't
Yeah.
accurate or whatever. So there was a problem right from the beginning. And then I don't know how many or what the time period was where Harper applied to all these jobs at SiriusXM. At some point, logically, common sense would say, I probably need to like get a referral, or like if I really want, I should have done some other research and other homework to try to figure out, is this a group within SiriusXM that I want to work for or what have you. But to just say blindly, I'm qualified, I don't use these mass applications. I don't apply to jobs very often, but I do apply periodically when I see something that's right up my alley. I don't apply to anything where I'm not at least, I think at 80 to 85% qualified. But given my rate of getting interviews, that it didn't matter. It still wasn't enough. So like, I'm not going to go sue them about it.
No, I mean, there are other ways. There are other things that people think that there's some prescient recruiters on the other end who'll be able to recognize their talent. Pshaw, it's not the reality. I mean, the number of people who are technical recruiters who don't know what API stands for. By the way, Harper, since November 2023, Harper has applied for approximately 150 positions with Sirius, including IT desktop support, software engineer, and technical support specialist, for which he was minimally qualified or overqualified on his based on his education and professional experience in IT and business administration. So it's that's 150 is a lot. Obviously, he wanted.
Every 3 days he's applying to a job.
He wanted to work at Sirius, and at some point, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It doesn't work that way. We counsel people, like him, and everyone's like him. Everyone's like him. If you want to work somewhere, you need to work somewhere. You're gonna want to get as much stuff out there as possible. We say the same thing in recruiting. It's like you have the option of spamming 200, 300, 400 people on LinkedIn Recruiter, or cherry picking 20 specific people, writing something, nice and, cuddly, getting 80% of the people, 16 people, versus LinkedIn 200, 300, maybe 2 or 3. I mean, it's to me, but it's the belief that constitutes effective work, and it doesn't. It's busy work. But if you're juggling many requisitions, you think that's all you have time for. But I say that's you can manage your day. You can manage the processes in a much more effective way with automation, with smarter human automation. But it requires you to stop and go, just because you're so good at using a hammer, not everything doesn't have to be a nail. You can change the way you do things. You can ask for help. You can go to the community and say, help me. What am I missing here?
Well, I just think, there's a certain naivety by thinking that, he was this was, borderline brute force attack on SiriusXM. That's insane.
But that's exactly what it is. And so here's what happens on the inside. You're a recruiter. You go, here's that person again. There's that person again. We said no, we said no, we said no. This is where, if you want to become a real talent advisor, you will call that person up. This is where I believe Sirius aired. You call that person up and say, look, I realize let's have a heart-to-heart talk. A half an hour with someone like that. Now, most recruiters are going to be they're going to fear that he's going to go contact a lawyer. Well, he did anyway. So come on, you messed up. But you had an opportunity to win somebody over, and to let's go over the position. I'm happy to go over your resume and the position line by line. And these are the things that I'm looking for. Look, I didn't put them in the job description. That's on me. Fix the problem.
I would be very curious to know how many times his name, of those 150 applications, how many different recruiters saw his application, right?
Well, I'm going to guess if the suit, the factual allegations section calls out 3 categories, as I discussed: IT desktop support, software engineer, technical support specialist. Let's assume that over the course of its 2023 till it was filed in 2025, 2 years, let's say worst case scenario, because the recruiting teams are declining, I say maybe 4 or 5 recruiters at most. And because it's iSIMs, when a person's record comes up, you see all the other places that they've applied.
It's very possible that more than one recruiter saw Harper's name.
Correct.
More than a dozen times. And yet nobody, they were either told, just don't even bother with this guy. His enter key is stuck. I don't know what's going on with this guy, but maybe they just didn't want to engage. I'm so curious.
I think that's more they don't want to engage. They're thinking, I don't know the experience level of all the recruiters there, but the saying sometimes when you forget you're there to drain the swamp when you're up to your ass in alligators. And so if there are if there are so many role positions, I have so many of these, Bob, you know that. You've known me long enough. So if you're juggling a large rec load, you don't realize that slowing down, this is my talent advisor, TA leader advice, slowing down actually makes you more effective.
Pace of change in the world of business is fast, and that drives incredible complexity for the world of human resources.
Welcome to the HR Data Lab's Brown Bag Lunch, a series of conversations with experts inside and outside the world of human resources on how to innovate, measure, and evolve our practices.
Our goal is to help provide you with practical examples of how HR has to change and to meet in this complex business environment.
Every week, we'll talk to new and different voices on all aspects of human resources.
And guess what? You get to chat with us live.
Live?
Live.
So they can answer questions or they can ask us questions?
They can ask, they can answer, whatever they want. They get to talk with us live.
That's awesome.
Sometimes we geek out on the data and technology that underlie the processes that drive the world of HR.
But the conversations are always insightful and fun. So please enjoy the HR Data Lab's Brown Bag Lunch.
But you need to know how to do that in a manner that makes sense for you and makes sense for the organization.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this one transpires. But yeah, it sounds like a host of issues with this one.
Yeah, it's the lawsuit. It's a very easy read. It's 18 pages. It's double space, so it's you can really.
Yeah, I downloaded it from one of the employment law firms had it available, so I just downloaded it this morning.
It was Fisher Phillips had it available.
Yeah, exactly. So look, it's when you've been working a lot and you're doing what you think is good things, and you think you're an attractive candidate, anyone will be lucky to have you. I get it, right? But even colleges that accept thousands of kids into their incoming class for the next year, you could have perfect, grades, SAT scores or whatever, but people are looking for more than that. And so kids get rejected from not just Ivy League schools, but other, tough schools with low admission rates. People with those perfect scores get rejected all the time. So there's no safeties, right? You can't just go into any company and say anyone. I mean, you've got to be, I don't know, there's rock stars that get passed over all the time. I mean, it's just
Look,
the way life works.
here's what I do. Look, I will write. From a recruiting point of view, recruiting leader, I have to apply because I want to see what that data point of candidate experience is like. That tells me what's good, bad, and ugly about the recruiting operations there. On the backside, what I'll also do is, because I got skills, I got stalker skills, is I will get the email, private email, work email, I'll do both, of the person who's likely going to be the hiring manager. And I will cyberstalk them online. I will find some things about them. And I will write a really good letter to them. And because I have pixel tracking, I will know when it gets opened. And sometimes I will write a post sharing the job, tagging the manager and the company. These are tricks, kiddies. They work. Then you can see when they look at your profile, at least on LinkedIn, then you got them. But this is, you have to have conversion validity. You can't simply do apply and go, my aura will shine through and I shall accede to the top step. What are you, high? Doesn't work like that. Never did, by the way. It was, to your point, referral, find a damn way in.
Perhaps to your point, I am personally pretty critical of people's processes now that I know how the sausage is made. And I can kind of say, well, if they don't know how to attract the right people, what does that say about, the rest of the organization? What does it say about the culture? What does it say about their priorities in terms of investing in their talent strategy? And so, especially for companies in the space who should know better and should be, walking the talk, I do hold it against them if I don't think they're doing it right. Or they're even, there was one company that I applied to, an analyst in a research firm, and they're hosting conferences on this subject for the C-suite. And yet when you go to apply to a job there, none of that advice has been heeded. So, and it's not a good look.
Well, that's the opportunity to improve things right there, which means you have to find a way into the person who's going to go, get Bob in here.
I offered that, but only after I was.
I can help, Bob. I can help forward. You. I can help you find these people. I can get I can get things about them. Why not? What have you got? You have nothing to lose, Bob. Nothing to lose at all.
Well, that's why I gave the candid, feedback. Some people are going to appreciate that. Others are going to be like, what a jerk. I know how to do my job. Thank you very much. And they move on. But it's just like, okay, this is a left hand, right hand thing. Don't have, like, where's your internal practice, right? To say, okay, we're going to go and now help ourselves do things better. We're going to make sure we are drinking our own champagne and heeding this advice. And it just doesn't happen as often as it should.
No.
So
look, this is a real fascinating era to be in. We can't allow, generative and agentic to, push the human element out of the way. The governance piece, which is your baby, it's actually becoming my baby too. The recruiting and talent acquisition and sourcing and branding and operations are all going to require a significant skill sets, significant number of AI related skill sets that many people don't have yet. And there are going to be new roles. I'm pondering that there might be a role for a talent acquisition ethicist for larger companies one day. That's new types of metrics that are going to be measuring that collaboration between humans and agentics. From a workforce planning standpoint, we've got gig workers, we got FTCs, full-time consultants, full-time employees, agentic agents, and anything else that's going to come by. Blending a workforce together and then measuring its effectiveness. The balance sheet has become infinitely more complicated. And we need people who are inquisitive enough to break things, inquisitive enough to think, I can't do it this way anymore. There's got to be another way to do it. Let me try.
Yeah, most organizations are not doing true like strategic workforce planning, and now it got a lot more complicated. So I don't know if that means they're going to be like, okay, now is the time, or they're going to be like, oh, I don't even know where to begin.
I think talent intelligence, and we could thank Toby Colshaw's Talent Intelligence Collective group, which you and I are both in. It's a small group of real weirdos who love this stuff. It's true. It's true. It's just true. But it's we look at the humans in organizations with an eye, with a good part of ourselves looking at how do we measure this in ways that allow us to plan, for a workforce that's going to evolve over time and not, lose any of its effectiveness, any of its results. It's going to continue to generate the needed revenue, to generate whatever metrics the CFO uses to measure the health and wellness of the balance sheet, to keep those things moving in a positive direction. I posit that, on a high corporate level strategic planning point of view, we bring in, strategic workforce planning into that. It's still not there yet. And so, we have data. We just need to refine the data and identify sources of new data and improve the data and just continuously work to, if you can't audit it, you can't automate it. If you can't measure it, you can't audit it. I made that up on the fly.
Well, I do think this year in particular, because, I think Agentic is like peak hype right now. So, but it is important to think about from all aspects, right? Whether you're talking about, productivity, efficiency, or whatever, but also to your point on the governance side, because governance does get more complicated, right? This data is flowing through all these systems, and it's doing it without us intervening in many cases. And like, what does that mean? You need that traceability more than ever to understand what went wrong and why and where within, larger sort of, life cycle processes and things like that. But, I also think, so you have already the strategic workforce planning thing, bringing in your workforce or people analytics team, your talent intelligence, on top of course, business and technology strategy folks, but even the agentic. I mean, I don't like to anthropomorphize the agents to say that they're part of the workforce, even though some may argue that, but it's still work. It's still tasks and still work that needs to get done. So I don't know, if it's strategic work planning as opposed to strategic workforce planning, like who and what are doing all these things, right? So I don't know how that necessarily evolved. I just think this year it's going to be particularly complex, and all the more reason why you need to pull in all these people from all these different places, different disciplines and different expertise to weigh in, because you need that. I mean, if you think just, the C-suite can do this on their own, I beg you not.
Oh, they can't.
To do that.
They simply can't. And when they, you can, the larger companies will hire big consulting firms, and, we know what they produce, but there's no grassroots personal, connection there. So that maybe we have to skunk work all these things and then take the results up. We know who our friends, we hired these people, so we're going to pick you. We need to sit quietly. Don't tell anybody. We're going to have a special conference. We're going to try to try to figure some of these things out. And then when it turns into something real, then we'll present it to the higher ups. But that's it. It's like you fail, fall down, try again. This is the engineering method. Engineered product. Try something new. Some of the best inventions, the best revenue generating products and services were developed on the fly. Why not when it comes to, strategic workforce planning, TI, strategic talent, whatever you want to call it. We haven't done a really good job. Look, It was right around, what was it, World War One, which is essentially the beginning of human resources, where the British, we had efficiency experts doing time motion analyses during World War. Well, that was the beginning of personnel right there. It's not like the old days, like an employee, you could shoot him or hang him. I'm joking. But the regimentation, the data collection, the analysis, the data collection analysis, that's what we need more of, not less of.
Yeah, for sure. One thing you just brought up had me thinking about skills, and it kind of relates to the, I was qualified, why am I rejected kind of thing. But AI fluency, AI literacy. I mean, how are you seeing, how quickly and how prevalent are you seeing that as part of the job description as far as like core requirements?
I'm seeing the phrase AI fluency required, and I go, okay, what does that mean? I mean, like, look, where's your assessment rubric?
Yeah, because I think about that in terms of readiness. I think about it in school, of course, because I think it was seventh or eighth grade, so I was probably like 12 years old or whatever when I first got a computer. I had one at home. I had a Commodore 64 at home, but in school they gave us, the classroom was filled with Apple IICs when I was 12 years old.
I'm still thinking about the Commodore 64s.
Early to mid 80s, I had a computer room in class. Everyone sat at a keyboard in front of an first Apple computer, and learned some basics, right? And so by not having AI incorporated into curriculum now, I feel like you've basically taken that away, right? And so I just wonder, for the people that are not destined to go to college or choose to find an alternate path or don't see the ROI or whatever it is, they should be able to come out of high school and do whatever, control their own destiny. And part of that is going to be having AI skills.
Up to a point. I mean, if it's your daughter, you know your daughter's friends, do you ever ask them what they know and how they learn it?
Only my daughter.
I think you'll find that using technology is very different than using technology. And you talk about, okay, show me some of the, ask her, how do you use AI? Next time her friends are over, can I ask you something? How do you use AI? Can you show me something you've done lately?
I think she would have told me if anyone did anything constructive with it. If anyone did anything besides just draw an image or use it like Google.
But there's your answer.
Yeah.
That's no different than using Snapchat and thinking you're an engineer.
The creativity and curiosity that they display in using social media applications gives me that much more confidence that they could easily switch gears and build things with AI, which was part of the point.
When you say that, what was it, like recording TikToks?
Applying filters, doing video editing, slicing in, putting in music and
okay. Applying filters, putting in music. Video editing is a skill set. Filters is a selection. Not all things related to these platforms are skills. They're just, using the platform. It's an on and off button.
I just want to extend their digital literacy to AI literacy.
Okay. Then if that's the case, then part of it is showing them, you ask them how they're using it. And then your brain's going to go, I bet they're not doing this with that, and it's related to it. Whatever that might be. How do you put together, you're preparing for an interview. Let's say you're preparing for an interview in an ice cream shop. Use it. What does the average ice cream store, you can create prompts to put together a scenario of, the types of questions that the average Main Street, ice cream parlor the owner may ask. And then, along with that interview, the question for each of the interview questions, build an assessment rubric to say, what's minimal, basic, strong, superb as answers. There are things you can do to start showing them things like that directly relate to what it is they're doing.
Well, that's the kind of thing that I want to. So I'm talking to the school administrators. I started talking to them in the fall last year, and they're finally going to start an AI task force. I'm not sure what that means yet, but they know I'm going to be involved, and part of it is asking these questions from a student perspective. But I want to ask the parents these questions as well, because none of my daughter's good friends' parents are in technology, but that doesn't mean they're not using AI at work, or maybe it's
Correct.
using it somehow.
Correct. Absolutely.
I'm guessing, but I just know anecdotally some of the ways in which they're using it where they should not be using it. But in terms of the constructive, positive, inquisitive ways in which they're probing and experimenting or whatever, I'm skeptical. But that's why I want to get involved. That's why I want to talk to the parents. I'm going to do an Ask Me Anything with parents. I'm going to see who's got this appetite for this, because don't you want every parent wants to see their kid succeed, and just because they're not getting good grades doesn't mean they're not going to have a success in life, right?
Absolutely. That's the Piagetian concept of readiness. College may not be at the age that kids go in, may not be the best learning place for them to learn at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I was not a great student, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that I'm using that as an example, but nothing. My job that I got at IBM did not require the business degree that I had, right? So I could have done other things. I could have skipped school altogether and probably still gotten the same job.
But whatever path it set you on, this is where you are now. It's going to be a fun next couple of years, Bob. Really will. I'm not a psychic. I am not I have no ability to see what the future is. The only thing I have is, as we have the wisdom of youth, or the memory of youth. We're actually a little bit of both. We've seen many changes. We've seen so much technology, wash over the gunnel and, fill up the boat, and here we are with something else. It's, we all, the fact that people grew up with Terminator and Skynet and sentience, it's like people, here on Long Island, those who were around and who were old enough in 1976 when Jaws came out are still scared of going in the ocean.
I don't doubt it. Steve, I really appreciate you hanging on for so long. You got anything coming up we should know about? You're not going to make it to HR Tech, right?
No, I went last year, and of the 483 or so vendors, I think I said this year, I think 475 of them said we have AI in our product. I don't know. This is going to be a very interesting year. I think this is the year of we're going to enter the era of massive consolidation and mergers. Mergers and partnerships are going to be big. It's a question of who's going to survive. If you look at Glenn Lindley's TA Tech ecosystem chart, the thing is, it's mind blowing. It's like this big, massive bowl of Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms all mixed into a bowl of milk. You can't see the bottom of the bowl. There's a lot of stuff out there, and each is the leading this or the leading that, and you claim of this and claim of that.
Yeah, that's been in the works for a couple of years. I mean, I put out a LinkedIn post before not attending HR Tech in 2023, and that's exactly what I said. Everyone's going to have this. Every booth is going to tell you this, and so start asking better questions. And here we are 2 years later, and maybe now it's time we'll ask those questions. Trustworthy is going to be the key. Who is trustworthy? Who is looking after their own shit?
I think the concept of trust. Edelman, the agency, puts out a trust barometer report each year. So if people in the audience, if you search for Edelman Trust Barometer 2025, you'll see the report. Without trust, you have lies. You have mistrust. And it's not good. And we don't need to complicate things. Trust is, I think, if you become a valued and trusted resource, whatever it might be, whether it's through your products or whether it's through your community, you'll survive. You will. You'll be viewed as having value, and maybe someone will buy you the way Workday is bought. the way SAP is bought, the way Oracle is going to have to buy something soon. It's just, they're going to have to.
Yeah, I mean, I would say whatever your growth plans are, you're going to find it increasingly important to be, a trusted member of this
Agreed.
ecosystem. And if you can't prove that to prospects and to the community at large, then you're going to be at a disadvantage. So hopefully that starts immediately.
Very interesting next couple of years here. Very interesting next couple of years.
Yeah.
Anyway, so as you can tell, Thumbelina thanks you.
I'm not sure what you're pointing to. Just your finger? What?
That's Thumbelina on her cat tree.
Oh, I see it.
Hi, Thumbelina.
Got it.
So anyway, Bob, thank you as always.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me for this marathon conversation. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.